Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little different. You're not going on a soothing vacation or diving into a whimsical bedtime story. Nope. Tonight you're waking up in a medieval village. The year? Somewhere between 1100 and 1350. The smells? Awful. The comforts? Non-existent. And the chance of making it through the day without getting arrested, ill, or accidentally branded a heretic. Let's just say you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments what's your current time and where are you watching from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before dawn, not because you set an alarm, but because a rooster just screamed like a banshee from the roof of your neighbor's shack. You're lying on straw, not a mattress, actual straw. Some of it's moldy, some of it's poking you in the back. Something small and very alive just scurried past your ear. Your bedroom is the only room, one space for sleeping, cooking, eating, arguing, and occasionally hiding from angry villagers. The walls are wood and wattle, basically a mud and stick sandwich, and they let in more wind than you'd prefer. There's a window, sure, but it's just a hole with a wooden shutter that barely stays closed. Glass. Ha. You wish asterisk asterisk. You reach for a blanket. It's scratchy wool. Coarse. Probably hasn't been washed since the last plague. And yes, it smells like goats, because you share this home with goats. The family owns two, and they live indoors with you for warmth and milk. Cute, until one of them pees on your only shirt. You glance around. Everyone else is waking up too. It's a family of 7 in this one-room house. Privacy doesn't exist here. Your grandmother is already muttering morning prayers. Your older brother's snoring in a corner, and someone just farted loudly. Honestly, you're impressed by the acoustics. Now you've got to go to the bathroom, except there isn't one. So you grab a clay pot, or maybe just head outside to the communal ditch. It's muddy, it's cold. You slip. Congratulations, you're now wet, freezing, and standing in what you really hope is just rainwater. You think to brush your teeth, except no one does that here. At best, people chew on sticks. At worst, rotting gums and dragon breath are the medieval default. If you happen to live near a monastery, you might hear of herbs like mint or sage used for freshening breath, but that's a luxury, not the norm. And toothpaste? The best they've got is crushed bones, ashes, or burnt bread. Yum. So now you're washed, meaning you splashed your face with water that may or may not have had a frog in it. You're dressed in the same tunic you wore yesterday and the day before, and it's time to start the day. Historians still argue whether most peasants owned more than one set of clothing. Some say yes, one for work, one for church. Others say no, laundry was rare, and bathing even rarer. What's certain is your outfit is made of rough spun wool. It itches like 1,000 ants, and it smells like everything you've done for the past 2 weeks. You walk outside and instantly regret it. The air is crisp, but the village stinks. There's the usual mix of animal droppings, human waste, wood smoke, and the ever-present scent of unwashed bodies. It's a rural aroma bouquet. Perfume was invented, yes, but unless you're nobility, your only scent options are farm and worse. You glance around the village. It's not charming. No cobblestone streets, No thatched roof Instagram cottages, just mud, more mud and huts that lean like they're trying to escape. Chickens dart between your legs. A pig wanders by. Somewhere, a baby is crying. And above all this noise, the ever present ringing of church bells, reminding you that sin is everywhere and God is watching, even while you try to poop in peace. Fun fact: medieval people believed the devil could enter your body through unguarded orifices, like your ears while you slept. So some wore metal charms to bed. You didn't last night, just FYI. You think, maybe I'll just go for a walk, but guess what? You can't. You're a serf, tied to the land, bound to your lord. You need permission to leave. You also need a reason, and getting some air because my entire house smells like fermented onions and goat farts doesn't qualify. Already, you've committed 3 acts of historical heresy, expecting privacy, assuming you could clean yourself properly, and thinking you had free time. As you stand there, taking it all in, someone sneezes near you. No one says, "Bless you." Instead, they flinch. Superstition is rampant, and sneezing might mean plague, or worse, possession. You hear bells again. This time, it's a death toll. Someone died during the night, probably from something we'd call completely treatable today, like a tooth infection, or a mild fever, or a stubbed toe that got infected from walking barefoot in, well, everywhere. Oh, and don't get too confident. Your own immune system isn't prepared for this timeline. The microbes here, they don't play. Even your probiotics would cry. So now you're hungry, but the firewood is damp, the hearth's not lit, and the bread is hard enough to chip a tooth. You think about coffee, then laugh. Tea? Nope. Juice? Only if you count the cloudy water leaking from last year's fermented apples. And still, the day has just begun. You sit down for breakfast, or more accurately, you hunch over a wooden bowl filled with what appears to be sadness and old oatmeal. It's called gruel. And it is, in every possible way, exactly as joyless as it sounds. Gruel is a watery porridge, usually made from barley, oats, or rye. It's the medieval version of whatever's left in the pantry. Imagine the consistency of thin paste, the color of beige despair, and the flavor of slightly damp wood shavings. There's no sugar, no fruit, no cinnamon drizzle. You eat it because you're starving, not because you're excited about the culinary experience. The bread on the table is several days old. It's heavy, dark, and probably has more sand in it than flour. That's not a joke. Bakers in medieval towns were often accused of mixing sand or chalk into their dough to make it go further. It made the bread gritty and, over time, ground people's teeth down to miserable little nubs. You reach for a cup. Inside is a warm-ish liquid that may once have been ale. Water isn't safe. We'll get to that. So many people drank small beer, a very low alcohol brew served to everyone, including children. If that surprises you, remember this: it was safer than water, and nobody had invented Capri Sun yet. You look around the room. Your younger sibling is picking a bug out of her porridge. She shrugs and eats it anyway. Protein. Someone starts saying grace before the meal. Religion is everywhere, not just on Sundays. Every bite you eat is either a blessing or a potential sin. That bread, if it was baked on a holy day, that's a sin. Eating too quickly, gluttony, wishing for butter, greed. Butter costs extra, by the way, and might be rancid. A chicken walks inside the house again. No one moves. It poops near the fire. You pretend you didn't see it and keep eating. Historians still argue whether the average peasant diet was sufficient to keep people healthy. Some evidence suggests that calorie-wise, it wasn't all bad, but variety, not a chance. Meals were predictable, repetitive, and seasonally limited. You eat what's available or what hasn't spoiled yet. Speaking of which, there's a cheese wheel in the corner. It's wrapped in cloth, has a suspiciously orange crust, and smells like sour feet. You are told this is a delicacy. You are unconvinced. You consider asking for more food, but that's a bold move. You're lucky to have what you do. Starvation is common during lean years. Crops fail, livestock die, and when famine hits, people do unthinkable things. There are stories, quiet ones, about hunger so extreme that entire villages disappear into the woods and come back changed or don't come back at all. So you finish your gruel, your jaw hurts from chewing the bread. You've burned your tongue on the weak ale, and your stomach is now a gurgling swamp of questionable barley and poultry bacteria. Great start. You head outside again and notice the streets have come alive. People everywhere, hauling buckets, yelling at donkeys, arguing over who owns which pig. A woman screams at a boy who allegedly stole an egg. The boy screams back that the egg was already cracked. This is your town square. You see the local baker's apprentice carrying trays of loaves to the market. You can't afford them. The cost of grain has gone up. Again, rumor has it, the local lord increased taxes to fund a tournament. Jousting, because nothing helps a starving town like funding a rich guy's horse cosplay. Someone hands you a turnip. You don't know why. They don't explain. You nod solemnly and accept your destiny. This is how breakfast transitions into chores. Now, if you're lucky, and you're not, you might live near a manor or monastery where food is more plentiful, but don't get your hopes up. You're not being invited to dine in the great hall. You're likely working in the fields, harvesting onions in the rain, or boiling laundry in animal fat for a coin and half a stale biscuit. There's best no brunch, no cafes, no cheeky mid-morning latte with oat milk. Your snack options are maybe an acorn you find on the ground, or lick your bowl and pretend it's sep soup. Quirky side note, some medieval people believed that eating eggs on certain days would invite demonic possession. Others thought onions could ward off disease, so naturally, everyone smelled like disease-proof despair. Someone nearby starts coughing, a deep, rattling wheeze that echoes off the mud-plastered walls. Everyone stiffens. You pretend not to notice, but you're already wondering how many days you have before the same cough finds you. But back to your stomach. It's not full. Not really. You're not starving, but you're always slightly underfed. That gnawing sensation is just part of life now. No one expects to feel full unless it's a holiday feast or someone dies and leaves behind salted meat. Oh, and remember how you thought about spicing things up? With what? Pepper is absurdly expensive. Cinnamon might as well be unicorn dust. Salt? Maybe. But it's traded like gold. You want flavor? Grow herbs in your own dung pile and hope for the best. As you pass by the blacksmith, you see him eating something from a pouch. It looks like a crusted meat pie. Your eyes linger too long. He notices, offers you a bite. You decline mostly because you saw a rat crawl into his pantry last night. That pie probably is the rat. So, let's recap. Breakfast was thin slop. Your bread sand papered your gums. Your drink was warm and vaguely sour. And now you're praying your body doesn't violently reject all of it. And still, this is better than what you'll eat tonight. It's only 9 a.m. You haven't even digested your questionable breakfast when you make your first real mistake of the day, talking, just talking. You see, medieval laws aren't just about murder or theft, they're about everything: what you wear, what you say, where you walk, who you look at. And right now, you're already suspicious. You mentioned to a neighbor that the bread tasted moldy. Seems harmless, right? Except you've just accused a baker of dishonesty. That's slander, and slander is illegal. Worse, it's punishable by public humiliation or even stocks. That's right. People might throw cabbage at you while you sit chained by your neck, all for calling a loaf a bit spongy. And what are you wearing, by the way? Oh, modern jeans and a hoodie? Sorry, in this timeline, that would get you arrested or accused of sorcery. More likely, your outfit is a scratchy tunic made of coarse wool, dyed a dull brown or gray. Bright colors are expensive and reserved for the rich. If you wore anything with blue or purple thread, you'd be asked which noble house you belong to. When you answer, the house of Netflix, that's strike two. Historians still argue whether sumptuary laws, the rules about who could wear what, were strictly enforced in small villages, but in towns or cities, they absolutely were. A tailor could be fined just for making a garment too fancy for a peasant. Even owning shoes with pointed toes was a status issue. Longer toes, higher rank. You, dear listener, are barefoot, deal with it. But wait, it gets worse. Because while you were asking for directions to the village well, you walked across the wrong field. That land belongs to Lord whatever his name is, and you've technically trespassed. It's not like there are fences or signs, but rules are rules. The local reeve think, angry hall monitor with a stick scowls in your direction. You try to charm him. Bad idea. Being too talkative, especially with someone of higher class, is frowned upon. You could be viewed as insolent or worse, uppity. You try to backpedal, but now you're stammering, which makes you look suspicious. People in medieval villages didn't trust fast talkers. You might be a thief, or an actor, or French. Speaking of which, you blurt out a few English words with modern slang. Brower awkward, or heaven forbid. Hashtag a woman nearby gasps. The reeve narrows his eyes. Someone mutters the word hex. Language isn't just communication here, it's identity. Post-Norman conquest England had a messy relationship with language. French was for the nobility, Latin for the clergy, English for everyone else. But even then, your English is wrong. Too smooth, too informal, too you. Now one of the reeve's boys points at your hoodie string. You instinctively pull it tight. To him, it looks like a small snake around your neck, or some kind of devil's rope. They whisper, "You're sweating. This is not going well." Quirky medieval fact. There was a law in certain regions that prohibited singing bawdy songs near religious processions. If caught, you'd be fined, or whipped, or both. And guess what? You were humming a Taylor Swift song just moments ago near a group of monks. That's going in your criminal record, right next to muttering strange words and possessing demonic rope accessory. A crowd has gathered now, not because they're mad, just bored. Public scolding is entertainment, Nothing's on TV because, well, no TV. You are the show. The Reeve grabs your arm. He's not gentle. You try to explain yourself, but each word digs you deeper. I'm from the future, you say. Great. Now you're insane and possibly possessed. He drags you toward the town square. People shout ideas. Stalks. Flogging. Make her wear the pig head mask. Yes, that was real. Humiliation masks were a thing. Historians still debate whether these public punishments were more about deterrence or theater, but they agree on this. It worked. People learned quickly not to step out of line. Unfortunately, you're still learning. At this point, someone throws a turnip at you. It misses, barely. You duck, and now everyone's laughing. Not with you, at you. You're tossed into the stalks, those wooden boards with holes for your head and hands. It's uncomfortable, humiliating, and worse, you're now stuck while chickens roam underfoot and children dare each other to poke you with sticks. Someone draws a mustache on your face with charcoal. It's not even a good mustache. Time passes slowly. Your legs ache. Your back is stiff. Your feet are asleep. You're not crying, but you're not crying either. A priest walks by and makes the sign of the cross. He doesn't stop. He just assumes you did something to deserve this. Eventually, you're let go. No apology, no explanation, just a warning. Next time, it won't be so easy. You nod, still covered in soot and poultry droppings. You try to go home, but you've now been labeled. You're the odd one. The one who talks weird, dresses weird, attracts trouble. People avoid you. You smell like fear and turnips. This, dear listener, is how quickly you break the law in medieval times. You didn't steal. You didn't kill. You just opened your mouth, wore the wrong thing, and stepped in the wrong place. The Middle Ages don't care about intention, only order. And order is maintained with sticks, stalks, and very suspicious villagers. Next time you feel the urge to joke about ye old times, remember ye old times had no tolerance for your sarcasm. You're free now. The kind of. Mostly no longer stuck in the stocks, but not exactly welcomed with open arms either. You limp away from the village square, nursing your pride in a sore neck when it hits you, something you hadn't really processed yet. This place stinks. No, really. The smell isn't just bad. It's everywhere. It's not one particular scent, either. It's a symphony of putrid notes. The air is thick with smoke from damp wood fires. There's an undercurrent of manure, a waft of rotting food, and that ever-present tang of unwashed human. You try to breathe through your mouth, but even that tastes like moldy straw and soot. Welcome to village life. There are no sewer systems here, no plumbing, just open trenches running alongside the paths, overflowing with everything from kitchen slop to bodily waste. People casually dump chamber pots out of windows, occasionally yelling Gardy-loo, a sort of heads up for those below. It doesn't always help. You might want to start walking closer to the center of the road or farther. Historians still argue whether people had a clean side to walk on, but really it's all just varying degrees of gross. And speaking of walking, every step is an adventure. The streets aren't paved. They're mud and refuse and puddles of mysterious origin. Your foot sinks into something soft. You don't investigate. A chicken flaps past, squawking in protest. You nearly trip over a piglet rooting through a pile of vegetable scraps. This is a shared space. Livestock and humans coexist with zero boundaries. Noise crashes in from all directions, and hammer clanks rhythmically from the blacksmith's forge. Somewhere, a woman is yelling about missing linens. Children shriek as they chase a dog through the mud, and through it all, a lute player strums a dismal tune while leaning against a wall that looks like it might fall over if you breathe too hard. This isn't the quiet pastoral village of fairy tales. This is full-on chaos with a side of tetanus. A woman dumps a bucket of gray water near your feet. It sloshes onto your leg. You don't ask what was in it. You don't want to know. All you know is that your socks are wet now, and there's no such thing as a dryer. You glance toward the well, where a line has formed. Water must be fetched fresh each day, and by fresh we mean debatably potable. Even that has to be boiled, which takes time, firewood, and fuel, none of which are easy to come by. It's a chore just to drink something that won't murder your intestines. You pass a group of men repairing a cart. One of them coughs, a hacking, wet sound. No one flinches. People cough all the time, and sneeze, and wheeze. Sickness is so common, it's practically a personality trait. Oh, and hygiene? That's a dicey subject. Bathing isn't routine here. In some areas, public bathhouses exist, but they're controversial. Some towns shut them down out of fear they encouraged immorality. Others use them as social hubs, gossip mills, or even low-key brothels. You, meanwhile, would just like a hot shower and some shampoo. Fun historical tidbit. People believed that soaking in hot water opened the pores and let in disease. So ironically, bathing was seen by some as dangerous. You were better off scraping the dirt off your skin and hoping for divine protection. And let's talk about your neighbors. You didn't pick them. You live 5 feet from a guy who talks to his chickens like they're his grandkids and throws rocks at the sun when he's bored. The woman next door brews ale poorly and screams at anyone who looks at her cow the wrong way. Privacy is not a concept. Thin walls, thin patience, no secrets. Try to vent to someone. Gossip travels faster than rats in the grain bins, which, by the way, are full of rats. The whole villages. Rodents rule this world. They sneak into homes, chew through food stores, and carry fleas that, oh yes, bring the plague. You may have heard of it. Spoiler, it's not gone yet in this timeline. You pass a butcher's stall. Meat is hung on hooks, out in the open, covered in flies. It smells like sweat and decay. You're told this is normal. Freshness is measured by how much mold you can scrape off. Refrigeration is a fantasy. And don't expect to cook something to perfection either. Kitchens are hearths. Fires are unreliable. Burnt on the outside, raw in the middle. That's your new food pyramid. You notice the sky is darkening, not from clouds, but from smoke. Chimneys belch black plumes that mix with fog and ash. Breathing deeply feels like licking a fireplace. No one mentions it. No one even notices. There's a dog sniffing at your leg now. It's not friendly. Medieval dogs aren't fluffy companions. They're scavengers, half feral, one-eyed, possibly demon-possessed. You freeze. The dog snorts and lopes off. You exhale. Small victories. You're exhausted, just from existing. The noise, the stink, the crowding, the endless stream of tiny stresses, it wears on you like a wet wool cloak. And guess what? This is the norm. This is a good day. No fires, no raids, no floods. Just filth, confusion, and your constant internal scream begging for Febreze. You think, maybe I'll just sit down for a second. But where? There are no benches, no clean steps. Every available surface is covered in muck, chickens, or a man mumbling to a turnip. So you keep standing, keep walking, keep pretending you haven't started talking to yourself. Oh, and don't even think about getting lost. Maps don't ist here. Street signs? Please. If you ask for directions, someone will gesture vaguely and say it's stest just past where the mill used to be, next to Gert Sip's old house, before she died. Thanks. Super helpful. Your head is spinning, your eyes sting, and you're starting to understand something important. Survival in the Middle Ages isn't just about avoiding disease or crime or starvation. It's about enduring the everyday reality of life in a world that was never meant to be comfortable. The noise, the filth, the smells, the chaos, they're not bugs, they're features. This is the package deal, all-inclusive misery. And it sets only noon. At this point, you'd give anything for a clean glass of cold water. Just one. Crystal clear, ice cold, maybe with a lemon wedge if we're dreaming big. But you're not dreaming. You're in a village where even wanting clean water is a luxury. You find your way back to the well. It's a wooden crank affair with a rope and a bucket, and the line to use it is long. You wait your turn, holding back a cough, because you're already on the village watch list for strangeness, and no one here trusts a cough. Eventually, it's your turn. You lower the bucket and hear the splash echo deep underground. When it comes back up, the water looks fine-ish, cloudy. A bug floating on top, a leaf, you squint at it, probably fine. You take a sip and instantly regret it. Your stomach flips. It's like sipping from a dirty aquarium. There's an earthy taste. Something metallic, maybe algae, maybe something worse. You gag, wipe your mouth, and now you understand this water could kill you. Historians still argue whether medieval water sources were always dangerous. Some say wells were relatively safe, depending on location and upkeep. Others point out that contamination was constant, from livestock runoff, nearby latrines, or just people dumping waste upstream. Boiling water helps, yes, but firewood is precious, and boiling every drop is a dream most can't afford to live. So if you're lucky, you get beer, or ale, or cider, or something fermented. Small beer, in particular, is barely alcoholic but helps kill bacteria. Even kids drink it. It's safer than well water. And bonus, it numbs the taste buds just enough to make breakfast gruel bearable. But let's say you didn't get the memo. You gulped the well water because you were thirsty. Congratulations. You now have an excellent chance of developing one of the big three medieval waterborne illnesses trademark to this century: intense cramps, diarrhea, and dehydration. 2, typhoid fever, and high fevers, and a rash, possibly hallucinations. 3, cholera. If you're unlucky with time travel, rapid fluid loss, death in hours. You start to feel queasy. Is that the water? The bread? The turnip stew from earlier? Doesn't matter. Your body is now in survival mode. It's trying to reject everything. And with no modern medicine, your recovery options range from pray about it to get bled by a guy with zero hygiene and a dull blade. But wait, it gets better. Because now that you've drunk suspect water, you're going to need to relieve yourself soon, and that, in medieval times, is its own harrowing journey. You head toward the edge of the village, where a communal trench or pit latrine awaits. It's nothing but a hole, some rickety boards, and a swarm of flies that seem to have unionized. You try to breathe through your mouth again. Big mistake. The stench is a physical force. It grabs your soul and shakes it. You do your business as fast as you can, all while avoiding splinters and making sure your tunic doesn't drag through anything. There's no toilet paper. You look around. Options include straw, moss, a smooth rock, or your own dignity. And remember, this is a best case scenario. Some homes don't even have a shared pit. People use chamber pots and empty them into ditches or onto streets. In cities, waste disposal was regulated by laws no one followed. London, for example, had fines for dumping from windows, but enforcement was laughable. You will be walking through someone else's bathroom decisions. You stumble back into the village center, pale, queasy, and slightly traumatized. You consider lying down, but you're terrified of passing out in the mud. Not because of thieves, though that's a possibility, but because you might wake up with leeches or half covered in goat nibble marks. You lean against a wall. It's damp. Of course it is. Quirky fact. Some medieval people believed certain water sources had spiritual properties. Holy wells, often near churches, were thought to heal sickness or protect from evil spirits. But even those weren't necessarily clean, just blessed dirty, which somehow doesn't make your stomach feel better. You manage to get some cider instead. It's sour, a little fizzy, but at least it doesn't taste like pond scum. You sip slowly, and the dizziness begins to fade. Your body is still confused, but it's no longer actively planning a mutiny. Small wins. You sit beside an old man who tells you without being asked about the time he drank from a cursed stream and lost his sense of smell for 5 years. You nod politely. You don't question him. You don't ask follow-up questions. Not because you're shy, but because your stomach just gurgled ominously, and the last thing you need is to be near another trench. And as the sun climbs higher, you realize something wild. You've spent more energy today trying not to get sick than doing anything productive. There's no gym here, no errands, no emails. Your entire life is just eat, avoid illness, repeat. Water is the most basic human need, and yet, in this world, it's a gamble, a spin of the disease wheel. You never know if the next cup will hydrate you or send you into a 3-day fever dream that ends with a priest reading your last rites while someone burns your mattress. You suddenly miss bottled water, miss ice cubes, miss that time you once complained that your tap water tasted too minerally. You'd chug a gallon of it now with tears of joy. So, what have we learned? In medieval times, water isn't life. It's a coin toss with your intestines. Every gulp comes with a side of paranoia. And when people here raise their cups in a toast, they're not just celebrating, they're quietly hoping today's drink doesn't kill them. You, on the other hand, are now rehydrated, sort of, still shaky, still nauseated, but functioning. You take a deep breath, only to instantly regret it, because someone nearby is boiling fish heads. It's Spets barely past lunch, hydrated loosely and still alive. For now, you try to shift your thoughts to something productive. Maybe you can take a break? Nope. Welcome to medieval labor culture. Breaks are for the dead, and even they might get dragged back up if a grave digger's behind on his quota. You see, if you're a commoner, and trust me, your life revolves around one thing: work, hard, back-breaking, soul-draining work, sun up to sundown. No weekends, no paid leave, no mental health days. You don't get a holiday unless it's tied to a religious festival, and even then, you'll probably end up cooking for it, cleaning up after it, or dying during it. So you report to your designated chore, which could be anything from tilling the Lord's fields to mucking out pig pens. And if you're wondering why you're working someone else's land for free, it's because you're a serf, and that means your labor isn't optional. You're bound to the land, like a plant that doesn't get to choose where it's planted. Historians still debate how much autonomy serfs truly had. Some argue they could negotiate aspects of their work. Others suggest their lives were more rigid than a monk's bedtime. But either way, today you're being ordered to help harvest hay, which sounds peaceful until you realize it's just relentless bending, lifting and breathing in more dust than an abandoned attic. You grab a wooden rake and start dragging bundles across the field. Your hands are soft, not anymore. Within minutes, you've got blisters. Your back protests. Your legs ache. Every movement feels like a betrayal from muscles you never knew existed. Meanwhile, the older workers are breezing through it like it's nothing. One of them chuckles when you groan. "First day," he says. You try to smile. Your face twitches. You nod, covered in sweat and regret. The sun is beating down on you. There's no sunscreen. The concept doesn't exist. The best defense people have against sunburn is wearing layers, thick woolen layers. So yes, you're baking in long sleeves, because if you take them off, you risk burns or being accused of impropriety. Skin? Scandalous. Even your ankles could start a rumor. Oh, and if you're lucky enough to be near a forest or stream, the Lord might have declared those off limits. Hunting? Illegal, unless you're nobility. Fishing? Only with permission. Foraging? Maybe. But if you're caught taking firewood or berries from the wrong tree, you could be fined or worse. You pause for a moment, wiping your brow, and suddenly there's shouting. Someone's ox has wandered into the grain field. Chaos erupts. The animal is sacred to the family's livelihood, but damaging the Lord's crop is a serious offense. The reeve shows up again, and his stick looks a lot less friendly this time. You silently thank the universe that it's not your ox, then immediately feel bad for thinking that, then go back to praying that someone else draws the reeve's wrath next. Back to work. Hay isn't the only option. If you were born in a town, maybe you're a tanner, scraping the hair and fat off animal hides with lime and urine. Yes, actual urine. Tanners were known for the worst smells in the medieval world, which is saying a lot considering the competition. Or maybe you're a blacksmith's apprentice. Sounds cool, right? Until you realize it means standing next to a roaring fire all day, swinging heavy tools, and inhaling metal dust while your ears ring from hammer strikes. People went deaf from it. Early retirement wasn't an option, mostly because there was no retirement. Women, by the way, weren't idle either. If you're female, your workload includes drawing water, grinding grain, spinning thread, sewing clothes, raising children, tending the fire, managing the home, and likely contributing to farm labor too. That's not multitasking, that's just being alive. Quirky historical aside, there was a job called a gong farmer. Their job, collecting and carting away human waste from privies and cesspits. It paid surprisingly well because absolutely no one else wanted to do it. Your own task shifts. Now you're helping shovel manure into sacks. You try not to breathe through your nose. The pile steams in the sun. Flies swarm like it's their birthday party. You keep going because if you stop, someone will notice. And there's no HR department here, only whips, shouts, and the occasional angry priest. Your hands are filthy. You wipe them on your tunic, which is also filthy. You're itchy. Something crawled into your sock an hour ago and hasn't come back out. You want to sit, but you can't because you haven't met the quota, and because sitting looks lazy, and looking lazy gets you punished. Remember those bells you heard earlier? They ring again, not to tell time. There are no wristwatches. It's just a vague signal. Morning work shift over. Next task begins. You don't get to stop. You just switch gears. Your legs are trembling. You're starving again. Lunch is more stale bread, maybe some onions, and if someone's feeling generous, a bite of dried meat. You eat it, standing up. There's no dining area, no clean space. You chew, lean against a post, and hope the dizziness subsides before someone asks you to haul something heavy again. You start to zone out, dreaming of chairs, of cushions, of fluorescent lighting and break room vending machines, of pizza that didn't spend 3 weeks hanging above a smoky fire to cure. You miss office politics. You miss traffic jams. You miss waiting in line at Starbucks, thinking, oh, why does this take so long? Because now you know what long really feels like. It's the length of a medieval workday. It's the weight of a hay bale on your back. It's the hours between now and when you'll finally be allowed to sleep. And guess what? There's just no end in sight. You've still got chores to do, still got obligations to fulfill. And if you don't, the church and the Lord and the town all have ways of making sure you remember your place. In medieval life, you don't work to live, you work to not die. And you're still barely passing that class. The sun is still high, and so are your chances of catching something unpleasant, because no matter how carefully you avoid the water, the mud, the rats, or the dubious stews, you're getting sick. It's not an if, it's a when. And spoiler, it's today. At first, it's subtle. A till, a tightness in your throat, a strange ache in your joints that wasn't there yesterday. You ignore it. Everyone's always coughing, sniffling, limping, and wheezing. It's normal. It's expected. You assume you'll walk it off. You one-stet. There are no thermometers, no urgent care clinics, no ibuprofen to pop just in case. When something hits, it hits hard, and no one rushes to help, because they're all battling their own slow-motion breakdowns. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where the human body is just another battlefield. You sit down on a barrel to catch your breath. Bad move. You start sweating, but also shivering. You feel warm, but your skin is cold. A farmer nearby eyes you warily. You all right, he mutters. You nod. He walks away faster. See? People in medieval times weren't just afraid of sickness. They were terrified of it, because when disease showed up, it didn't whisper, it screamed. You think you can power through, but someone mentions your pale face. Another swears they heard you coughing. Just like that, the week their aunt died. Now you're a walking omen. a suspected plague seed. People take a step back. You try to laugh it off. They don't laugh with you. Historians still argue whether medieval people understood the concept of contagion. They didn't know about bacteria or viruses, but they knew something spread. Miasma, the bad air theory, was popular. If the wind smelled wrong, you closed your windows and burned herbs. If someone nearby got sick, you blamed the weather or their sins or the alignment of Saturn. You stand dizzy. Try to walk. Your knees wobble. You lean on a wall and feel your stomach churn like boiling broth. Someone calls for the village healer. Oh no, the doctor arrives, and you immediately question your choices in every life you've ever lived. He's not wearing a plague mask. They won't exist for another couple centuries, but he does have a pouch of dried frog skins, a belt full of rusty tools, and the confidence of a man who once removed someone's spleen because it felt evil. He puts a hand to your forehead, frowns, sniffs your breath, licks a fingertip, and holds it up to the wind. Then, with absolute certainty, declares, "Your humors are unbalanced." Wonderful. The four humors theory runs everything here: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If you're sick, one of them is out of whack. Too much phlegm? You need something spicy. Too much blood? Better drain it out. That's right. Welcome to bloodletting. You protest. He ignores you. He pulls out a small knife and a clay bowl. The crowd gathers again. Great. Another episode of public medieval misery theater. You feel a slice, a trickle. The world spins. You lose more than just blood. You lose hope. Better out than in, someone says. Later, you're weak, pale, and a little violated. But you're not dead. Not yet. So the doctor ups the treatment. He makes you drink a concoction of garlic, wine, and something suspiciously bitter. You ask what's in it. He says worms. You hope he's joking. You aren't allowed to rest indoors. You might taint the house. So you're sent to lie under a tree. A sympathetic neighbor brings you a cloth soaked in vinegar. She presses it to your forehead and whispers a prayer. It's oddly comforting, even if the cloth smells like salad dressing and despair. Meanwhile, someone lights incense nearby. Another person mumbles that illness is a punishment for pride. Maybe they laughed too much yesterday, she says. You want to scream? You don't. You cough instead. Quirky side note. Some treatments involved stuffing a sick person's nose with herbs or hanging a dead mole around their neck. In one case, a prescription advised placing a live chicken's rear end against the patient's pustules. You're lucky your condition didn't escalate that far. Yet, time passes. You drift in and out of sleep. Someone sings a psalm. The wind rustles leaves. You see a butterfly. You almost feel peaceful. Then you vomit. And now the mood shifts. Fast. People step back. The healer mutters something about putrid bile. Someone mentions demons. Another says you need confession. Fast. A boy asks if you're cursed. A girl says her dog had the same symptoms and exploded. You want to yell, "It's just bad water," but you can barely speak. Your lips are cracked. Your tongue feels like burlap. Someone suggests leeches. Another says it's time for a pilgrimage, meaning you'd walk 100 miles in your condition to a holy site and probably die halfway there. A priest arrives. You didn't summon him. No one does. He just shows up when it gets serious. He kneels beside you, whispers Latin, offers last rites. You blink, try to protest. He sprinkles holy water on your forehead. It burns a little, probably the vinegar from earlier. Rest, he says. If you wake, it will be God sits, and then he sets gone. Eventually, the fever breaks. Maybe you're drenched in sweat. Your entire body is sore, your stomach is empty, and your soul feels like it's gone through a car wash powered by nightmares. But you survived. Sort of. This isn't the flu. This is daily life. In medieval times, every illness is a test of faith, of will, of your ability to keep fluids inside your body. You sit up slowly. The crowd has dispersed. The healer is gone. But the fear remains. People saw you sick, and now, even if you're better, they'll keep their distance. In this village, memories are long and fevers are contagious. Your body's alive, but your reputation, it just caught a disease of its own. You're shaky, your lips are dry, and your legs feel like they've been replaced with wet reeds. But you're well now, at least by medieval standards. That means you can walk, sort of speak, and you're not actively vomiting. So naturally, there's no time for rest, because now it's time for your spiritual check-in, and no, it's not optional. You shuffle toward the village church, not because you want to, but because not showing up raises eyebrows. Missing mass is suspicious. It could mean you're lazy, or worse, sinful. And sin in medieval times isn't just a personal failing, it's a communal threat. If you mess up, God could punish the whole village. Crops might fail, livestock might die, rain might stop, and trust me, you don't want to be the reason that happens. You reach the church, if you can call it that. It's small, stone, and cold. The smell of damp earth mixes with candle wax and incense. The wooden benches are rough and splintered. There's no choir, no stained glass, no gentle organ music, just silence, echoing coughs, and the low voice of a priest who looks like he hasn't smiled since birth. Religion isn't gentle here. It's not inspirational Instagram quotes or podcasts about mindfulness. It's fear. It's guilt. It's constant pressure to confess your wickedness for simply existing. You were born sinful. You are sinful, and you must spend your life apologizing for it. The service is in Latin. You understand none of it. No one does, really, except the clergy. Everyone just stands, kneels, mutters responses they barely comprehend. You try to follow along. You kneel when others kneel. You bow when others bow. You avoid making eye contact with the priest because he already suspects you're a heretic. After all, you speak strangely, survived a sudden illness, and asked where to get soap. Historians still debate just how spiritually tormented the average medieval person felt. Some argue they accepted the rules with simplicity and faith. Others believe many lived in constant dread of hellfire, demons, and eternal damnation. Either way, nobody sips skipping church to sleep in. You sit through the service, trying to blend in, but you keep messing up. You cross yourself the wrong way. You mouth modern English under your breath, and at one point, you accidentally yawn during a reading from Revelation. A woman gasps. A child points. You try to cover it with a cough. Bad idea. After the Mass, you're approached by Brother Elric. He's tall, wiry, and has the unsettling gaze of someone who truly believes Satan is hiding behind every tree. You seem troubled, he says. It's not a question. You nod. careful not to say anything that could be interpreted as blasphemy, sarcasm, or foreign ideology. He presses a small wooden cross into your palm. Prayer, he whispers. Prayer is your only hope. You nod again, but he leans in closer. And confession, tonight, after Vespers, there are signs around you. You don't instead ask what signs. You don't instead want to know. Quirky historical tidbit. Some people believed that sin could physically mark the body. A birthmark in the wrong place could be the devil's kiss, a twitchy eye, a sign of possession. Even using your left hand too often could mark you as suspicious. You leave the church with everyone else, walking slowly, avoiding glances. Your stomach still turns from time to time. Your legs are sore. Your soul, apparently, is in peril. You pass by a group of children reciting prayers. One of them stares at you and makes the sign of the cross. Another just throws a pebble and runs. You reach your home, if you can call it that. A single room, one fire pit, and 5 other humans. You sit near the hearth and stare at the flames, hoping the day might ease into evening without more drama. Nope, because your neighbor burst through the door, panicked. Her daughter's sick. She's trembling. She had a dream about fire and snakes. They've called the priest, and maybe, just maybe, you cursed her. You blink. You say you've done no such thing. Too late. Remember that time you muttered something when you were feverish? Or that odd thing you did with your hoodie string? Or the fact that you somehow survived when others have died? It's enough to start whispers. The villagers don't need proof. They need a scapegoat. This is what spiritual fear does in the Middle Ages. It doesn't comfort, it controls, it divides. Everyone's scared, and everyone's watching everyone else. You're told to report to the priest again. A second confession, public this time, just to be safe, just to prove your innocence, just to show the village that you aren't carrying any demons inside your very modern, very confused body. You stand before the altar, heart pounding, surrounded by villagers who now look at you like a broken window, cracked, wrong, and maybe dangerous. You kneel. You mutter apologies for sins you don't understand. You swear loyalty to the church, to the saints, to the holy relic that may or may not be a chipped bone from someone's dog. You're absolved, kind of. The priest eyes you the way a cat watches a twitching curtain. The crowd begins to murmur less. Someone offers you a crust of bread. Someone else pats your shoulder, lightly, but you're marked now. Not officially, just socially. You've danced too close to the line, asked too many questions, survived too many things. You walk home in silence, hands trembling slightly. You've passed the test. This time, but there's no reset button here. One more mistake, one more bad dream, one more poorly timed sneeze, and the pitchforks might not stay in the shed. And as you finally lie down on your hay-stuffed bedding, trying to rest your aching body and even more exhausted mind, you realize something chilling. God may forgive you. The village never forgets. You wake up the next morning to the unmistakable scent of sweat, smoke, and spoiled goat's milk. Again, you're slightly less feverish, which is nice, but your body is stiff, and your skin feels like it's been lightly sandpapered in your sleep, probably from lying in straw that was last changed when the king was still teething. You stretch and instantly regret it. You smell bad, like eye-watering bad. And so does everyone else. You start to wonder, what if I just take a bath? Adorable. Bathing in medieval times is complicated. First, there's the suspicion too much washing was considered vain, indulgent, or even sinful. After all, if God wanted you to be clean, he wouldn't have invented dirt, right? Second, there's the logistics. There's no indoor plumbing, no hot showers, no scented soaps with cute names like Lavender Sunrise, just cold water from a bucket, maybe warmed by the fire if you're lucky, and a bar of soap made from animal fat and lye, which, yes, feels like washing yourself with rage. And third, there's the fear. Remember the theory about pores opening and letting in disease? Yeah, many believed bathing made you more vulnerable to illness, not less. So people didn't bathe often, not because they were lazy, but because they thought it might kill them. Historians still argue how often people really bathed. Some sources suggest once a week in wealthier towns. Others say peasants bathed only a few times a year. There's even debate about whether full immersion or just a sponge bath was the norm. But one thing's certain, you right now are part of the unwashed masses. You ask your neighbor if there's a bathhouse. He raises an eyebrow. Are you from Rome? He says. You laugh nervously. He does not. You try to improvise. You heat some water in a pot, carry it outside, and splash it onto yourself behind the house. Problem is, the house has no walls in the back, just a fence that 3 chickens and a curious toddler peer through. Privacy? That's for monks and royalty. You scrub your armpits with a handful of moss. It smells like mildew and disappointment. You try to rinse your hair, but the soap gets in your eyes. You scream. Someone nearby screams back. You both keep screaming. It's fine. You dry off with your tunic, which is also your shirt, also your blanket, and also smells like regret. You now smell like wet goat, charred onion, and possibly mildew. But hey, cleaner mildew. You step back inside feeling vaguely proud until your family recoils. What's that smell? Your sister asks. Did something die in the soup? You glare. It's me, you say. They look impressed, but not in a good way, in a you just licked a candle kind of way. Quirky fact, people used herbal sachets to mask body odor. Rosemary, sage, and lavender were popular for those who could afford them. Others relied on smoke from the hearth to dry out their scent. That's right, they smoked themselves like jerky. You try this too. You stand by the fire for an hour, rotating like a rotisserie chicken. You smell like burnt wool now, but at least it covers the armpit moss. Still, the whole experience has marked you as a weird one again. You clean yourself. You change your socks. You care about smells. These things raise suspicions. People associate strong smells with strong character. If you smell too nice, what are you hiding? Then comes the worst part. Laundry. Laundry is not a chore. It sets a crusade. You take your tunic to the communal washing area. It's a stream. That's it. Just a stream with some flat rocks and angry women yelling at their children. You awkwardly kneel beside them. They stare. You nod. You try to wash your shirt, but it won't lather. You scrub harder. Your hands turn red. Someone hands you ash and says, "Try this." You do. Now your shirt smells like wet fireplace. There's a debate happening nearby whether demons can enter through dirty clothes. A woman claims her cousin's neighbor's goat exploded After wearing a soiled cloak, you pretend not to listen. Once clean, you drape your tunic over a branch to dry. It hangs there like a damp accusation. You sit beside it, trying to ignore how itchy your skin feels without fabric. Every bug in a 10-foot radius smells your vulnerability and comes to investigate. At this moment, you'd give anything for deodorant, a spritz of body spray, one single baby wipe. But instead, you rub crushed mint leaves under your arms and call it a day. It burns, but at least now you smell like spicy despair. As the afternoon sun bakes your drying tunic, you notice something horrifying. Everyone smells bad, but they've learned to ignore it. You, the outsider, are still painfully aware. Your senses haven't dulled yet, but give it time. And what's worse, you're still not clean. Not by modern standards. You've washed in questionable water, dried with a dirty cloth, and rolled around in enough pollen and dust to set off an allergy apocalypse. But socially, you're now considered too clean, suspiciously clean. Which brings us to the real horror. Medieval people believed extreme cleanliness was tied to pride or witchcraft. Yes, witchcraft. You overhear someone whispering that you smell like flowers and that your skin doesn't look blotchy enough. These are not compliments, they're warnings. If you scrub away the grime, what else are you trying to hide? A demon? A pact with the moon? Unholy skincare knowledge? The irony is rich. You smell better than yesterday, and now you're in more danger than ever. You wander back home with your damp tunic over your shoulder, hoping it dries before nightfall. Someone makes a joke about you being a water priest. You laugh quietly, then walk faster. As the sun dips low and the fire pit smokes with dinner's slow-cooked sadness, you realize something important in this world. To be too clean is to be out of place. The dirt is part of the culture. It's armor, camouflage. To reject it is to reject the very rhythm of life here. So you sit, wearing your half-wet shirt, surrounded by smoky bodies and scratchy blankets. You smell like earth and fire and stress, and somehow that's safer. In the Middle Ages, cleanliness isn't next to godliness. That's next to getting accused of heresy. So now you tear cleanish, suspicious, and possibly one sarcastic comment away from getting burned at the stake. Great. Let's add one more medieval anxiety to your growing collection. You might be a witch. You, with your weird words, strange clothes, unnatural cleanliness, and that time you made the fire flare up just by stirring it a little too hard. Yeah, you're raising eyebrows. And in a village where people think comets are omens and cows can be cursed by a glare, you're one wrong sneeze away from being dragged to the priest with a torch in hand. The Middle Ages were not kind to people who didn't blend in, especially if you spoke oddly, or healed too quickly, or heaven forbid, knew things. You say, it's probably just indigestion. When someone complains of stomach pain, they stare. How do you know that word? Did a demon tell you? Did you read it in a forbidden scroll? Are you one of those people who, gasp, knows how to read? Historians still argue whether widespread witch hunts truly began in the medieval period or closer to the Renaissance. But make no mistake, the fear of witches, demons, and heretics was very real. Any misstep could get you accused. A strange birthmark, a dream you share, a joke that lands the wrong way. You have made all three. One morning, the village awakes to a sick pig. It's foaming at the mouth, refusing to eat. Obviously, there are many rational explanations. bad feed, parasites, or just plain old pig flu. But the local logic is far more creative. Because didn't you look at that pig yesterday? Didn't you mumble something as you passed it? Maybe you were cursing it or transferring illness through eye contact. The pig's behavior is suspicious. Your behavior is worse. They blame you. You're summoned again to the church. Not for prayer. This time, it's for inquiry. You're sat in front of the priest, a stern man with a voice like gravel and eyes that haven't blinked since 1213. He asks you if you've ever spoken with dark beings. You ask if mosquitoes count. He doesn't laugh. He asks if you've ever seen a black cat lately. You say yes. You even pet it. This, it turns out, was a trap. Black cats are suspect. They're considered familiars, animals that serve witches, carrying their messages, assisting in spells, maybe just judging you silently while sitting on a fence. If you've been near one, you might be in league with something unnatural. The priest then asks about your dreams. You hesitate. You did have that dream about flying, which was just your brain trying to remember airplanes. But here, flying in dreams is a known sign of consorting with evil forces. Quirky medieval belief. Some people thought witches literally flew to nighttime gatherings called sabbats, where they danced with the devil, cast spells, and plotted bad harvests. The flying ointment used was sometimes said to be made from hallucinogenic herbs and rendered fat. Don't worry, you haven't used it yet. You quickly say your dream was about falling. Falling is fine. Everyone falls. Very Christian, very humble. The priest nods. Yous have passed for now, but the damage is done. People don't forget rumors, and they certainly don't forget accusations. Now everywhere you go, you hear whispers. That Sep's the one who speaks backwards. Sometimes she knew the rain would come yesterday. I saw her eyes glow when she picked up the coal. You try to defend yourself, but the more you speak, the worse it gets. It's like quicksand. You're calm, that's suspicious. You're upset, obvious guilt. You're silent, hiding something. You talk too much, witch. Eventually, the village decides to test you. The methods vary, none of them good. There's trial by water, where you're thrown into a pond. If you float, you're a witch. If you sink, you're innocent. By either way, you lose. Or the needle test. They poke you with a dull blade to find a witch's mark, a spot that doesn't bleed or feel pain. In reality, they just keep poking until someone gets bored. There's also the weighing test. Witches were thought to be unnaturally light. If you weigh the same as a duck, congratulations, you're probably guilty, and you've accidentally wandered into a Monty Python sketch. You've survived the accusation, but now you're radioactive. You narrowly avoid the worst of it. Why? Because the pig got better. Turns out it just had something stuck in its throat, but no one apologizes. No one says, "My bad for nearly drowning you over a farm animal." They just nod quietly, mutter prayers, and watch you even more closely. People stop talking to you. Children run the other way. Neighbors, accidentally, forget to invite you to gatherings. You've been socially excommunicated without the paperwork. It's a dangerous place to be, because once you've been accused, it's easier for them to do it again. You're already marked, and if anything weird happens, a fire, a broken bone, a failed harvest, it'll be your name on everyone's lips. You try to act normal. You lower your eyes. You stop whistling. You wear darker, more boring clothes. You do everything you can to blend in. But you can set, not really, because in a world ruled by fear and superstition, the person who asks why is always the first to burn. Nightfall. You'd think that after such a grueling day, with your muscles aching, your stomach empty, and your name cleared, kind of from witchcraft accusations, that you'd finally get some peace. Nope. Night in medieval times doesn't mean rest, it means risk. Because once the sun goes down, the world around you changes. The sounds, the shadows, even the rules shift. Whatever fragile order exists during daylight hours melts into something far more chaotic when the village goes dark. Your home. Remember, a one-room box of straw and sadness is lit by a single flickering candle. If you're lucky, oil lamps are expensive, candles are time-consuming to make, and firewood is always in short supply. So you learn to move carefully, slowly, blindly. You step on someone's foot, then a goat, then a family pot that shatters with a sound like thunder. Great. Outside, it's worse. There are no streetlights, no porch lamps, no let me turn on the flashlight on my phone. There's just the moon when it shows up, and whatever glow comes from hearths leaking through crooked shutters. The rest is pitch black. Historians still argue how active people were at night. Some evidence suggests peasants often went to sleep early and woke up for a couple hours in the middle of the night, a pattern called segmented sleep. Others claim nighttime was mostly a time of fear and caution. But whatever the case, one thing is certain: night is not safe. You hear a scream, distant, short, muffled, could be a fox, could be something worse. You freeze. Everyone else continues what they're doing. No one rushes to check. That's not bravery. That's experience. You don't go outside at night. Because outside there are wolves. Literal ones, not metaphorical. Forests are thick. Villages are scattered. Wolves smell livestock. They come close. You hear them howl, and it cuts through the air like a blade. Your goats bleat nervously. You pretend you're not shaking, but animals aren't set the only danger. There are thieves, bandits, drunk wanderers. If your village is near a trade road or a border, it's open season for troublemakers. You want to lock your door? Good luck. Most homes don't have doors, just a curtain or crude wooden plank, and even those can be knocked aside by someone determined or desperate. You scurry back inside. You try to go to the communal outhouse. Bad idea. You step outside and realize just how vulnerable you are in this era. You can't see. You can't call anyone. You can't defend yourself. You remember the stories: men dragged into the woods by strangers, women followed by shadowy figures with no faces, no names, no mercy. Now you've held your bladder hostage to fear. And then there sups the superstition. The night is thick with it. People believe spirits wander after dark, that demons linger near crossroads, that witches, like you maybe, gather under the full moon. You hear whispers about the wild hunt, a ghostly procession of riders that swoop through forests, kidnapping souls. If you hear it, they say, you're already lost. You wrap yourself in your itchy blanket, trying to shrink into the shadows. But it's hard to sleep when every creak of the walls sounds like someone breathing near your ear. A baby cries in the next hut. Dogs bark. Then silence. Thick, suffocating silence. You close your eyes, and then you hear footsteps. Outside, slow, crunching, not animal, human. You don't breathe. You hope it's your imagination. But then something taps against your wall. Once, twice. You sit up, so does someone else in the room. Your brother reaches for the iron poker near the fire. Your mother whispers a prayer. Your grandmother mutters something about St. George and protective sigils. Everyone is still, listening. Then nothing. Just silence again. You lie back down, but you don't close your eyes. Because you've now learned the real truth of medieval nights. It's not the wolves or the criminals or the cold that gets you. It's the not knowing. The sounds you can say place. The shapes that flicker at the edge of firelight. The way your own heartbeat becomes a threat. And sleep is a gamble. You drift off eventually, not because you're comfortable, but because your body has no more energy to not sleep. You dream. It's vivid, too vivid. You're walking down a hallway lit by torches. People whisper in Latin. A shadow follows you. A hand reaches out. You turn around, and there's no one there. You wake in a cold sweat. Outside, the wolves howl again. Inside, the fire has gone out. You are in total darkness. And now you understand why candles were precious, why families slept close, why even the bravest man in the village won't go out after midnight without a crucifix and a weapon. Because the night isn't set, just dark. That's alive. You pull your blanket tighter. You tuck your feet in. You whisper to yourself, just a few more hours until sunrise. Because that's how people in medieval times survived the night. Not with comfort, not with protection, but with patience and prayer. Morning comes, but it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like defeat, like someone smacked you with a cold ham and whispered, "Get up, peasant." You didn't sleep, or maybe you did, for 45 seconds, here and there, between wolf howls, screaming goats, and your own brain whispering, what if that dream wasn't a dream, but the sun is back, and that means no more lying around. It's time to move, to work, again. But there's a problem. You still feel awful. Your stomach is unsettled. Your skin is clammy. Your throat burns. The fever might be back, or maybe it never left. You stir dizzy when you sit up. The room spins like a carousel designed by someone who hates joy. You blink, and suddenly the thought hits you. You might need a doctor. Hilarious. Because in medieval times, doctor is not what you think it is. There's no white coat, no clipboard, no smiling person asking how your pain ranks on a scale of 1 to 10. What you get instead is a traveling physician, barber surgeon, or herbalist, each with wildly different levels of training, methods, and terrifying tools. And guess what? One of them happens to be passing through the village today. Everyone is excited. They say he studied at a university, which back then meant he'd maybe spent a few years listening to lectures about Aristotle, bloodletting, and leeches. So many leeches. He greets everyone with the enthusiasm of someone who's seen too many boils for one lifetime. You're ushered forward. You shuffle toward the village square. Slowly, you're not the only one. A line of coughing, limping, bleeding locals snakes around a wooden cart. The doctor is standing beside it, dressed in layers of black cloth, smelling faintly of rosemary and vinegar. He stares at you, then pokes you, then sniffs you, then declares, with the confidence of someone flipping a coin, you have too much black bile. Of course you do. Historians still debate how deeply the four humors theory influenced daily medical practice, but one thing is clear: balance was everything. If you were sick, it was because something inside you had gone rogue. Too much blood, time for leeches; too much phlegm, mustard plasters, and scalding water; too much yellow bile, purgatives; too much black bile, time for a poultice. He pulls out a small cloth bundle, dips it into something brown and suspiciously warm, and slaps it onto your chest. It smells like onions, vinegar, and possibly despair. You say it burns. He says that means it's sep's working. Then he ties it tightly with twine and mutters a short prayer. No bathing, he says, and no garlic. Garlic angers the spirits. You nod. You leave. You're now sticky, uncomfortable, still sick, and slightly more confused than before. But your day is a stet, because now the barber surgeon wants a look. You didn't ask, but he's got free time and, more importantly, he has tools. He wears an apron that's definitely seen better centuries. There are stains. Too many stains. You try not to look at them directly. You notice a rusty saw hanging from his belt. That's not comforting. He asks if you've had dark dreams. You say yes. He asks if you had any bowel movement in the past 3 days. You say, "Can Spetch remember?" True. He says, "You need an enema." You run, but not fast enough. Quirky medical tidbit. Medieval enemas were sometimes administered with tubes made of tin or leather. The liquid, herbal infusions, salt water, or even wine, for cleansing purposes. You now feel very cleansed, because the next thing you know, you're lying on your side, surrounded by curious villagers, and someone is pouring lukewarm broth into a pig bladder. You clench. You panic. You accept your fate. It's over in a moment. But emotionally, you'll never recover. You stagger home. Along the way, an herbalist offers you a handful of dried leaves and says, "Steep these, smell them, hang them above your door." You nod. Anything that doesn't involve animal parts or invasive procedures feels like luxury now. Back in your hut, you try to rest, but the poultice is still burning. The enema has left you hollow, and you've just realized no one sanitized anything. Those tools, reused. Those hands, unwashed. The herbs, gathered from the same field where pigs just pooped this morning. You lie there, body aching, stomach gurgling, brain replaying every humiliating second of the day. You feel no better, possibly worse. You now smell like pickled onion and herbal regret. And yet, everyone insists the treatment is working, looking better. Your brother says, "Yous have got that glow," says your neighbor. One woman even says, "Your cough sounds much more holy now." You wonder if you say you're delirious. You probably are. You remember that somewhere in town there's a monk who practices bloodletting. You avoid him, but just knowing he's out there with his dull knives and charts of planetary influence is enough to give you chills. Because here, health isn't just science, it's superstition, it's religion, it's whatever half-baked theory the nearest healer learned from a guy who once treated a duke with honey and leeches. Used to have survived the Dr. Sep's visit, technically, but you still feel like a cow that got milked, kicked, slapped, and told to say thank you. You curl up under your scratchy blanket and whisper to yourself, "Maybe tomorrow will be better." Then someone coughs outside. and someone else throws up, and a baby screams, and your poultice slips off and lands in the goat's water bucket. Never mind, maybe next century. You wake up with the distinct feeling that your insides have been stirred with a pitchfork. Again, you try to stretch. Bad idea. You feel like a crumpled scroll that someone spilled soup on and then tried to read anyway. But you're alive, and in medieval times, that counts as a win. Unfortunately, there's been a theft in the village. Someone's chickens are missing. 3 of them gone in the night. No feathers, no mess, just vanished. And even though you're barely able to sit up, you're summoned because you're new, you're odd, and people remember your herbal smelling sickness, your strange mutterings, your goat poultice mishap. Maybe you stole the chickens. Maybe you bewitched them. Maybe you fed them to your black cat under the moon while reciting spells in TikTok language. You're dragged to the center of the village again, but this time, it's not stocks, it's a trial. Yes, an actual medieval trial. You expect logic, evidence, anything remotely resembling justice. That's cute. Instead, you get a circle of people with crossed arms, pursed lips, and pitchforks that may or may not be symbolic. The Reeve asks questions. You answer carefully, slowly. You try not to sound defensive, but also not too calm, because that's suspicious. Someone brings up your cleanliness again. Another person says they saw you staring at a cloud yesterday, and that's not normal behavior. You want to scream? Instead, you sneeze. Bad move. People step back. Someone shouts, "Mark of the devil." Another yells, "They sip summoning storm spirits." You are now dangerously close to being voted off the village. Historians still debate the fairness of medieval justice. Some say local communities were surprisingly balanced. Others argue that trials were based more on emotion, reputation, and superstition than any real evidence. Spoiler today is going to support the latter theory. The Reeve decides it's time for a trial by ordeal. You gulp. This could mean several things. Trial by water. You're tied up and thrown in a pond. Float equals sign guilty. Sink equals sign innocent, but also possibly drown. Trial by fire. You carry a red-hot iron for a set distance. If your wounds don't fester in 3 days, you're innocent. Trial by oath. You swear your innocence, and if enough people believe you, you're good. Problem? No one believes you. They go with the water option. You're tied, roped like a sack of grain, and led to the stream. A murmur passes through the crowd. Some are curious. Others look delighted. One person's eating bread like it's a show. You want to argue. You want to plead. But instead, you remember the advice from yesterday. Sparber surgeon. Dawn set thrash. The water hates thrashing. Euster dropped in. The water is freezing. Your body convulses. You kick instinctively. You float, which by the rules of this absurd world means you are guilty. Of what? No one knows anymore. Witchcraft, chicken theft, breathing with rhythm. You pulled out and tossed on the bank, gasping, soaked, shivering. Your tunic clings to your body. Your dignity clings to nothing. The Reeve steps forward and says, "We still wait. 3 days. If your fever returns, it sets a sign. A sign of what? Divine judgment? Black bile? Maybe just hypothermia? You're allowed to go home, but only because they're not quite sure what to do with you yet. And because, technically, you haven't confessed, which is a problem. Because confession is kind of how Medieval justice works. You admit guilt, true or not, and you're punished, then forgiven. If you don't confess, people think you're hiding something, and if they suspect enough, they'll find someone to make you confess. You get home and collapse on the dirt floor. You're shaking, whether from cold or fear, you can't tell anymore. Someone gives you a blanket, another gives you a chunk of bread. You thank them, they don't meet your eyes. Word spreads quickly. You're the chicken thief, the stream floater, the one who smells like rosemary and witchcraft. That night, someone chalks a symbol on your door. Protection, they say, from you. Quirky side note: symbols like crosses, circles, or strange knots were used as witch marks in many villages, sometimes to guard against evil, sometimes to mark it. The difference depends on who's watching. You try to sleep, can't. You're too busy thinking about what comes next. Because medieval justice doesn't need evidence, it just needs a reason. And once the mob decides you're a problem, the only thing protecting you is fear, their fear of what might happen if they're wrong. In the morning, you stir summoned again, but this time, not for punishment, for penance. The priest believes your condition may have caused you to wander off the righteous path. He demands prayer, fasting, public kneeling, a week's silence. You say yes to everything, not because you start guilty, but because you want to live. You kneel in the mud outside the church for hours, in the cold, reciting psalms you don't understand. People pass by and nod approvingly, the same ones who watched you nearly drown yesterday. You stir, soaked, bruised, starving. But for now, you're absolved. Until the next chicken goes missing, you've made it this far, which, considering the odds, is kind of miraculous. You haven't been burned, exiled, or locked in a louse-filled pit. Sure, you've been accused of witchcraft, nearly drowned in a stream, and had a leech-related incident you don't talk about, but still you're surviving. So now you start to wonder, is anyone actually living well here? And the answer seems obvious. The nobles, the rich, the ones with the castles and horses and fancy embroidery that doesn't come from a sheep's butt. Maybe they have it easier. Maybe if you could somehow slip into their world, things would finally get better. So let's say for a moment, you get your big break. Maybe your face is unusually symmetrical. Maybe you amuse a minor noble with your bizarre speech and foreign ways. Maybe you're whisked into the manor house to serve in some capacity, not as a guest, obviously, but as a curiosity. At first, it feels like another planet. You step into a great hall where tapestries line the walls. There are candles everywhere, food on platters, music in the corner, and a roaring fire that doesn't smell like boiled socks. You're in awe. Then you step closer and realize it's not all luxury. The bread is nicer, yes. The wine flows, sure, but the air still smells like unwashed feet and turnips. The walls are drafty. The windows, glass but small and warped, and the nobles, they don't look well, pale, bloated, constantly dabbing at their faces with scented cloths. One is scratching themselves under the table like a flea-infested bear. You suddenly realize something profound. Wealth doesn't buy hygiene, or happiness, or health. Historians often point out that while nobles had access to better food and servants, they were also victims of their own excess. Rich diets, poor medical knowledge, and dangerous political games meant they died young, got poisoned frequently, and suffered from everything from gout to gangrene. You glance at the food being served. There's meat, yes, but it's been boiled beyond recognition. Spices cover the rot, not enhance the flavor. That pigeon pie? Crunchy in all the wrong places. And the wine? Probably safer than the water, but not by much. Then that's the clothing. Sure, it looks impressive. Flowing fabrics, dyed silks, golden clasps, but under those layers is a sweaty, itchy, barely washed human wearing about 20 pounds of fashion armor. You hear one lady whisper that her corset hasn't been undone since Lent. Another swears her undergarments haven't been changed this fortnight, and she says it like a badge of honor. You start to itch just listening, and then there stacks the drama. Nobles don Steft relax. They scheme, they glare, they talk in half sentences and drink from goblets while side-eyeing each other. One false move, one rumor, one misspoken word, and you Steft out, or poisoned, or mysteriously vanished in the woods. Quirky historical tidbit. Court intrigue was no joke. Nobles were constantly trying to outwit each other, form alliances, destroy rivals, and with no cameras or fingerprints, anything could be blamed on foul humors or divine judgment. You begin to miss the peasants. At least they're straightforward. Sure, they'll throw you in a stream or blame you for a sick pig, but they're not subtle about it. You're ushered into a side chamber to help clean. You step outside for air and find a maid crying in the herb garden. You pass a nobleman vomiting into a gold-plated bowl. No one blinks. It's normal. He's been drinking heavily for days. The doctor said it would rebalance his passions, and if that doesn't work, they'll put a hot rock on his head to scare the evil out. You ask what Sep's wrong. She says the lady of the house accused her of stealing a hair ribbon. The punishment? Locked in the cellar for 2 nights with nothing but a bucket and dry bread. The ribbon was found, of course, on the lady's own head. You nod. You understand now. Even here, especially here, power doesn't protect. It distorts. It isolates. Nobles may have gold plates, but they're still afraid of bad dreams and demon cats. They're still getting bloodlet by candlelight and hoping prayers will heal the plague. You return to your hovel that night with a new perspective, covered in soot. Yes, still itching, still hungry, but grateful you weren't born into that strange velvet-wrapped cage. Because if peasant life is brutal, noble life is a different kind of trap. You're watched constantly, judged relentlessly, and one misstep isn't just social suicide, it's actual suicide. And the worst part? You still get the same leeches, the same smells, the same fear of nighttime footsteps and unexplainable fevers. Because no matter how high your tower is, you're still living in the Middle Ages. And the Middle Ages doesn't care about titles. Everyone from stable boy to baron is just one bad sneeze away from a very long dirt nap. And now the sun dips again. You see her still breathing, still walking, but just barely. After everything you see, felt, eaten, smelled, and stepped in, one thing is clear. One day in medieval times is more than enough. Your body, a wreck. Your skin's rubbed raw from itchy wool. Your fingers are blistered. Your legs tremble with each step. And you haven't had a proper meal that didn't come with a side of dirt or judgment in over 24 hours. Your mind? Equally frayed. You've been accused of witchcraft, subjected to a literal ordeal. treated by a man who thinks vinegar and frogs are medical miracles. In your sleep, a horror movie loop set in a barn. You limp toward the edge of the village, following a trail of muddy footprints and goat pellets, passing familiar faces who now squint at you like a walking question mark. People still aren't sure about you. You're not quite cursed, but you're definitely weird. A child waves, half-heartedly. You wave back, slowly, like someone unsure if they're part of this world or just haunting it now. You reach a quiet patch of grass near the woods. The breeze brushes your cheeks. It smells better out here, less like smoke and cabbage, more like pine and maybe a hint of clean air, if you squint your nose just right. You sit and think. The day started with itchy straw, then questionable gruel. You drank something that may have been water or early stage death. You toiled in fields until your back folded like a deck chair, got treated for an imbalance of humors, were nearly drowned over some chickens, and sat through sermons that made you question whether your hiccups were demonic. And now, you're just trying to survive the evening without getting eaten, robbed, or accused again. And yet, it sep's kind of beautiful. The sky is painted with warm streaks of amber and crimson. The distant hum of the village is quieter now, pots clinking muffled prayers, the occasional goat trying to eat someone's shirt. You hear a lullaby from a nearby hut, a soft, trembling voice, a mother singing to a child. Words you don't understand, but the rhythm is gentle, human, and that sips when it hits you. Despite the filth, the fear, the superstition, and the parasites that are now probably your roommates, these people endure. They love, they laugh awkwardly, maybe, and mostly at your expense, but still, they laugh, they survive with nothing, with no idea if tomorrow will bring sickness, war, or famine. They wake up anyway. Maybe that sip's the strangest part of all. Not the leeches, not the boiling fish heads, not even the flaming onions people shove up their noses when they're congested. No, the strangest thing is that life here continues, even when it's unbearable, even when it's completely absurd. It presses forward, muddy, smoky, half-starved, and often ridiculous, but forward all the same. And you wouldn't at last. Not really. Your body is too soft. Your mind too used to modern comforts. Your stomach rejects goat stew. Your patience doesn't tolerate candlelit punishments for stealing firewood. But for a moment, just a flicker, you feel connected to something deeper, to the rhythm of survival, the raw, gritty pulse of history beating through every straw mattress, every prayer whispered in Latin, every barefoot dash through rain-soaked dirt. Perfect. Then your stomach growls. Rote. Romance of history aside, you're still hungry. Again, and someone's yelling that you forgot to help bring in the grain sacks. You groan, stand up, and hobble back toward the chaos, toward the smoke, toward the never-ending noise of chickens, bells, and humans just trying to make it through another day without catching fire, disease, or blame. And in the deepest, most honest part of you, you whisper, never again. So now, as the candles flicker low and the medieval night creeps back in with its wolves and whispers, let your body begin to soften. You're no longer wrapped in coarse wool or trudging through mud with blisters on your feet. You're safe, warm, back in your own time, where your bed doesn't double as a barn and your water won't betray you. Take a slow breath and another. Let the memory of that long, chaotic day fade into something soft and distant, like the echo of hooves across cobbled stone, like a hymn you almost remember but never quite knew. Feel your limbs grow heavy. Let the weight of the medieval world slip off your shoulders. No need to worry about plagues or priests or puddles that aren't puddles. No one sips judging your clothes. No one sips watching your dreams. You are still, you are here, and you made it through goat screams, trench latrines, and herbal enemas. You survived the unspeakable for a day, and now you rest, because tomorrow there are no hay bales waiting, no trials, no bells, only quiet, only comfort, only sleep. Shh, let it take you.